And yeah, so that should be it. That's interesting. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, with that, let me go ahead and get started. Yeah, admit. Still people trickling in here. I won't get started right away. So I'll just go ahead and start talking a little bit about, I was trying to think of, what kind of topics we could discuss this month. And I was debating about whether or not to actually do a presentation on Kotlin. And then, well, I was afraid that might happen. But anyways, I was trying to go through and think of a good topic to do, and then all the stuff with GameStop happened, and I got kind of curious, and I started looking through WallStreetBets. I don't know how many people here are doing subreddits, or I use Reddit just a little bit, but I started subscribing to WallStreetBets just because I was curious, about what are the kinds of things that people are posting up on there, and so I found it pretty interesting. But I came across a YouTube channel called Part-Time Larry, and this guy is he teaches programming. He's a software engineer, and his channel is dedicated just to doing kind of like people that are interested in finance and trading and cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. And he had a video that he had done on WallStreetBets, and specifically mining WallStreetBets for stock information. But he did it all in Python, and he used some libraries that are exclusive to Python. And so I was kind of curious, looking at the APIs and things that he was using. It's like, this would actually make a pretty good Node presentation. And so essentially, I did the same thing that he did in his video. I did it in my I did it for the presentation tonight. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So this is the WallStreetBets logo here. A little disclaimer, one of the things I want to do is, if anybody has any ideas or topics for Node.js presentation or JaxNode presentation, it doesn't have to be JavaScript or Node specific, but we're always looking for presenters, somebody that might be interested in doing a presentation in upcoming months. With that plug, it's just some full disclosure for everybody here. I'm not a fiduciary. Please don't take this as financial advice. Don't take financial advice from anybody that bought an airplane. I bought an airplane, so it's not a good investment. It's not considered a good investment. I also own BlackBerry stock, and that's one of the things that I thought was interesting about this whole thing, was that one of the stocks that was being promoted on WallStreetBets was BlackBerry. And so part of my disclosure here, I've owned BlackBerry stock for a couple of years. And one of the reasons why I own BlackBerry stock is that my company, we're partners with BlackBerry. We're also partners with Salesforce. And so we do a lot of engineering work with them. We use a lot of their software. And because of that, I kind of liked some of the stuff that BlackBerry was doing. But that being said, like I said, so don't take this as financial advice, because if you look at their stock, I bought their stock when it was selling for $10 a share. And then it went down to, last year went down to like $4 a share. And then it went up to like $28 a share. And I didn't sell, I held on to the stock. So I still own my BlackBerry stock. I think it's back down to like $11 a share or something like that. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So if you haven't seen WallStreetBets, this is what it looks like. It's just a regular subreddit. So if you're not familiar with Reddit, Reddit, the whole idea is that you can create a subreddit for all kinds of different communities. And there's actually multiple communities on Reddit for finance and doing stock trading, cryptocurrencies, that kind of stuff. This one's a little bit more outlandish than the other ones. And I think their motto slogan is that they're like if 4chan had a Bloomberg terminal. So so a lot of the stuff on there has that same type of sense of humor. There's also a lot of stuff on here that some people might find offensive. So if you're easily offended by stuff you might find in a comment section, stuff like that, it's probably not a good place to visit. But I personally found a lot of stuff on there to be pretty humorous. So this is the kind of stuff, when they say meme stocks, this is one of the reasons why. Let's blow that up. This is on WallStreetBets yesterday. Somebody did a deep fake for Rambo 3 where they put Keith Gill, his face, onto Sylvester Stallone's body, and redid this scene from Rambo 3. I'm pretty sure, I think this is from Rambo 3. And the meme, diamond hands. So let's talk a little real quickly about WallStreetBets. It started in 2012. Like I said, it's a subreddit on Reddit. It's meant for retail investors, but I'm pretty sure at this point, a lot of the hedge funds and other investment firms and stuff are looking to see what's going on here. They also had a Discord server, but that's now defunct. 2020 happened, so I'm pretty sure everybody here has a similar situation. It's like you might have been working in an office, and then they came in March of last year and said, "Guess what? Everybody's going to be working from home, right?" And you combine that with also a lot of people lost their jobs and they got like stimulus checks. And so a lot of people created Robinhood accounts. And so that brings us to today and GameStop. So end of last month, GameStop actually for the last 6 months, GameStop has been actively promoted by Keith Gill, whose moniker is Roaring Kitty on YouTube. I won't repeat what it is on Reddit. And one of the things I think they discovered was that Melvin Capital and a couple other hedge funds had shorted GME. Not only did they short the stock, but they actually had shorted it to 138% or 140% of the actual numbers of shares that were available. So, needless to say, let's see here. Needless to say, I think somebody saw that and short squeeze was started. And so short squeeze is basically is when a stock is being shorted and then all of a sudden people start buying the stock and increasing the price. That forces the short sellers to actually have to purchase the stock. So I'm not sure who this is. Needless to say, the hedge funds had to get bailed out to the tune of billions of dollars in losses. GME actually went up to $483 in intraday trading. And then what happened was Robinhood, which is one of the places where people were buying a lot of the shares, they got a call, the CEO got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning from the DTCC, which is the group that basically sets the capital requirements. And they said, you guys need to deposit $3.5 billion tomorrow. Otherwise, we're shutting you down. And it was like, huh, what? And so they had to negotiate with them. And part of that was that until they could raise more capital, they had to, I think it was 13 stocks altogether, they had to stop the selling or the purchasing of those stocks. You could sell the stocks, but you couldn't purchase them. And of course, once you do that, that decreases demand for the stock and then the price falls. And now the price is down to $43. So last time I checked, it was at $43. It may be higher or lower at this point. But that was kind of like the net effect was that, everybody tried to buy the stock, the price shot up. Some people made a lot of money, some people lost a lot of money. And hence, that's why they were having a conversation on Capitol Hill today about what was going on. So that kind of brings us to the topic. And the thing that's really interesting about markets and finance and stuff like that was that for a long time, it really was not digital. Back in 2007, though, the stock market did go digital. And so probably everybody's seen the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And yeah, here we go. And one of the things that's interesting about that, if you look at the floor of the stock exchange now, it's kind of dead, right? And I had an interesting opportunity a little over a year ago before the pandemic happened. I got invited for a meeting at the New York Stock Exchange, and I was actually taken on a tour of the floor. And the floor now is basically just for show. I'll show a picture of it here in a second. But one of the things that kind of came out of this was that once the stock market essentially was transferred really over to servers, these organizations kind of cropped up. They're called HFTs, or high frequency traders. And so they write software, automated bots essentially, that go out there and buy and sell stocks. And there's little tricks and stuff they do to try to kind of like front load purchases and stuff like that. And there's also all these new exchanges that have cropped up. And there's also something that you might have heard about recently called dark pools. And all a dark pool is kind of like an unofficial exchange. So like Goldman Sachs, a lot of the big investment banks and stuff like that have their own dark pools where you can buy and sell different securities. Another thing that's really kind of happened back in 2009, Bitcoin was launched, and since then there's been all kinds of different what they call altcoins and stuff that have cropped up, and so that's also become one of the things that's heavily traded now on as well. So this is a picture I took when I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And what's interesting about this is you see these little kiosks, these little booths that are set up, but it's all basically for show. It's like CNBC basically has a studio now on the floor. All the actual real activity is going on digitally. So this is Michael Lewis. He's a former stockbroker. There's a good chance you've probably seen a movie that's based off of one of his books. He wrote Moneyball and The Blind Side, which are both excellent movies. He also wrote a book that I liked a lot a couple of years ago called Flash Boys, and another one that was also turned into a movie called The Big Short. And what's interesting about The Big Short, there's a character that's played by Christian Bale, and the name of the guy is Dr. Michael Burry. And Dr. Burry, he's a licensed physician. He's an MD turned financial whiz. He started a company called Sky Capital, and this is a hedge fund. And so one of the things he started doing is he started going through and actually looking at these collateralized debt obligations, which is basically, if you remember the financial crisis, it's like there's all these mortgages that got packaged together. And one of the things he did was he found that there's a growing number of mortgages that were defaulting. There's talk, I'm sure people remember from like 2006 or 2007, the subprime mortgage, when that was starting to become a problem. But the conventional wisdom at the time was home prices never fall. And so he actually went to, I think, most of the big investment banks and purchased financial instruments based off of essentially shorting the mortgage industry, shorting those CDOs. And so he actually wound up making $700 million for his investors off of that. If you saw the movie, there's some drama involved with actually getting the investment banks and the credit agencies to actually admit that there was a problem. But once they did, he profited quite heavily. But what's interesting is that, you know, at the end of the day, all he did was just look at data. He looked at data on those CDOs, and so he just went through the spreadsheets, looked to see, you know, here are all the different mortgages. Here's the ones that have been paid on or been paid up, or at least, and here are the ones that are like 3 months overdue and stuff like that. And we started going through these triple bond rated, financial securities. He saw, it's like, these things aren't that good. This is gonna come crumbling down. And but he found value. It's like Wall Street didn't see the problem. He saw the problem, and he wound up essentially betting against the mortgage industry, and he profited quite heavily from that. Now, another book, which I think leads a little bit more into what we're talking about tonight, was this book that Michael Lewis wrote called Flash Boys. And most of what the book really talks about is high frequency traders and the effect they've had on the stock market. And so there's kind of three main subjects they're featured in the book. One is this fiber optic line that was built between Chicago and a data center in New Jersey. The data center in New Jersey is where the stock market is. So this is where the NYSE, NASDAQ, this is where they keep their servers. And so, you know, typically if you're using existing fiber optic lines, you know, fiber optic lines kind of run all over the place. And so what one investor did was he actually built like the straightest path possible for a fiber optic line between Chicago and New Jersey. Like literally, he just picked the straightest path he could possibly pick. And then what he did is after he got the fiber optic line finished, he actually started charging people for access. And so what wound up happening was, the idea was that they were going to profit, they were going to make money basically with giving people essentially whatever it was, like 30 milliseconds or 40 milliseconds, something like that, of a speed advantage. They would be willing to pay whatever he was willing to charge to use this fiber optic line. And so that kind of sparked some people's curiosity. Why are they building this fiber optic line between Chicago and New Jersey? The other subject they talked about in the book was this programmer named Sergei Alnikov. And he's a Russian programmer who worked for Goldman Sachs, and he was imprisoned. And this guy's pretty interesting. He was I think he came over here, I want to say probably end of the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s, and started working, programming on Wall Street. And his specialty really was kind of like, switching networks, right? And so a lot of the HFTs, one of the things that they try to do is like, they have to be able to kind of switch back and forth. And so I believe he was doing a lot of stuff with Erlang. So Erlang, I think, was originally written to be kind of like phone switching software. And one of the things this guy did was, he was looking at the code, the switching code that Goldman Sachs had been using, and it was all open source software. They had taken essentially open source software, stripped the headers off the top of them, and then put Goldman Sachs copyright on it. And so my understanding is that, when they, typically with open source software, when you make a change or whatever, you contribute the change back into open source. And back then, this is before Git and GitHub really kind of took off. everybody was still kind of using Subversion for doing open source software. And so he was making, I think about, I want to say over $400,000 a year working at Goldman Sachs. And he got a job offer to go work for a high frequency trader for essentially 3 times as much money as he was making at Goldman Sachs. So he naturally took the job. And Goldman was a little bit put out that, he quit working for them, went to go work for a competitor. And so they started going through and taking a look, and they contacted the FBI to come in and take a look at, what he'd been working on, because they thought that it's like, well, he's been posting code, online. And so this FBI agent said, oh, this is interesting. And so he went to go question Sergey. And it's like, what's a subversion? Why are you posting code to Subversion? That sounds subversive, right? And for software engineers, Subversion is a very normal thing and stuff like that. But if you're an FBI agent and you don't have any background in software engineering and stuff like that, that might sound subversive. So he got into a little bit of trouble. He wound up going to prison, I want to say for about a year. And then he won an appeal and got let out. And so he does consulting now. But yeah, that was one of the interesting stories in the book. But the main story in the book that I thought was really interesting was this company called IEX. Now, you might have heard of IEX, you might not have heard of IEX. IEX is a company that initially got started as a dark pool. And the reason why it got started was because there was a broker that was working for, I want to say, the Royal Bank of Canada. And he was going in making all these large institutional trades where it's like he needed to buy, let's say, 20,000 shares of Microsoft, as an example. And what would happen is when he would go to make an order or a call for let's say 20,000 shares, what would happen is he put the order in, he'd get 10,000 back at the price that he'd originally been quoted, and then the next 10,000 would come back maybe a half cent or a cent higher per share. So if you factor, you do that over and over and over again, it's like you're losing thousands and thousands of dollars because of that. And it turned out what was happening was when he was going to place his orders or look up a quote for a stock price, the HFTs would see that there was a quote for, let's say, 20,000 shares of Microsoft, and then they would go out and buy 10,000 shares, jack up the price. Now, that's technically considered front loading, and normally it's considered illegal to do front loading, but a lot of these things are happening like literally like in microseconds. And so because of the SEC reporting and stuff like that, it's not really visible because they take I want to say they take snapshots of like every second, but there's really trades happening in microseconds. That's how quickly things are happening in basically the digital security market. So that's one of the things I thought was pretty interesting. And there's a guy that worked for Brad at IEX, and he's a Scottish guy, and he's trying to figure out, it's like, well, what can we do so that the HFTs can't front load? They can't get out in front. And he figured that they had about a 40-second or 40 millisecond advantage or something like that. And so what he wound up doing, I thought this was actually pretty innovative. He figured out how far does light have to travel over, let's say, 40 microseconds as an example. And then what he did is he got a fiber optic line and he spooled up enough fiber optic line so that it equaled about that amount of time and light speed. And then he used that to connect the HFTs into their dark pool. And because of that, they didn't have a speed advantage anymore. And I thought that was actually a pretty innovative way of actually basically setting it up so that their exchange would be fair and people couldn't front load. So that was one of the main things that was kind of featured in the book. And they've since gone public, and they're now like a regular exchange. They're just like the NYSE or NASDAQ now. But they have all kinds of APIs and things that developers can use. And they want it set up so that, if you are doing automated trading and stuff like that, you can use their platform, but you're not going to have a speed advantage like the HFTs had at that time. So these are some of the topics I think that are kind of important for software engineers. So most of the data, most of the data and most of the services and stuff you need to be able to do this stuff are either online already or they're free. There's lots of open source tools. I'm just going to demonstrate just a small smidgen tonight of some of the stuff that's available. Many providers have Python, Node, and .NET SDKs and stuff. So if you're already familiar with Python, you're familiar with .NET, or you just want to use Node, there's SDKs for most of these platforms. A lot of the boards and stuff that people are using, like for instance, like WallStreetBets, there's an API that you can use for accessing Reddit as an example. And so some of the things we can do is we can build automated trading bots. There's actually platforms and SDKs for doing that. One of the strategies that people are using is we're using arbitrage to basically profit off of trades. So, these are some of the types of retail investments that people can make. So obviously you can buy and sell stocks and different securities, funds, ETFs, that sort of thing. You can also do options tradings. There's also derivatives that can be purchased as well. There's something I just found about recently called flash loans. Obviously, shorting is not really a retail investment type thing, but I'm sure if you have enough money and you want to short somebody, that you could find somebody to help you do it. And then one of the big things recently has been cryptocurrencies, and cryptocurrencies have become a lot more popular. You've probably seen some stuff in the news about Dogecoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin obviously hit $50,000 recently. So there's lots of stuff going on right now with cryptocurrencies. It's pretty interesting. So these are some of the services and tools that I've just kind of taken a look at. Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, I believe both of them have APIs and stuff that you can use as well. Yahoo definitely does. I have a demo of that tonight. Robinhood, is mostly an app, website, and stuff that you can use for doing your trades and stuff like that. But there's an unofficial API that you can use. One of the things about using an unofficial API is that there's a chance that it can break. So if you're looking about doing this seriously, it's like Robinhood might not be the best vendor for doing this. There's another one called Alpaca, which is, that is an API and a platform that you can use for doing trading. There's another one I was taking a look at called Binance that's specifically set up for cryptocurrency trading. One of the services I'm going to show up tonight is called pushshift.io, and it's actually it's a big data front end for Reddit posts. So you can go and look at all the comments and all of the all of the posts that are done on Reddit pretty quickly, and that's actually going to be part of my demo tonight. Another thing you can also do is you can monitor Twitter. So the Twitter API has streams where you can monitor, hashtags or different words and stuff that people. So if somebody's, let's say, talking about, let's say, President Biden as an example, you could listen for that. So there's people that are always kind of listening for like newsworthy type things that might go on. And I'm sure that some of these HFTs have trading bots that are looking at Twitter to see what people are talking about and then making decisions and stuff based off of what they're seeing people say on social media. There's also a library called TALib, which stands for technical analysis. And that lets you take essentially trend data for a stock, and then it'll do some analysis on that and give you results. And then the last part of kind of what I'm going to be demoing today is going to be on sentiment analysis, and basically looking at the sentiment of posts and then trying to decide if it's positive or negative. So we're going to take a look at that as well. So pushshift.io, like I said before, this is a big data API for Reddit. Reddit also has their own API. You can use the service, but you're limited to 60 requests a minute. And there is actually a Python library that you can use for accessing this data. And it's already set up with that service limitation built into it. So when you're going to query data and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about busting your limit. But I'll show you how you can do that very easily in Node as well. There's three main endpoints that you can use into that service. There's one for comments, there's another one for submissions, and there's also one just for subreddits. Oops. Apologize for that. I locked my screen. Okay. So we're going to the moon, diamond hands. So let's do a quick demo here. All right, let me do this. Can everybody see my screen okay? Everybody can. So for this demo, let me do this. Let me pull up the code. What I've done is I've created a repo here, and I've seeded what I'm using is I'm actually using a database called Timescale DB, which is essentially it's a Postgres database with some extensions on top of it. And what I did was I've created some tables. And so I have one table where I keep all the stocks. And then I have another table that I'm using for mentions. And so if you want to run this example yourself, there's a script in here called the import stocks. And what I'll do is it will take these CSV files. I just got these off of NASDAQ. Anybody can go to NASDAQ and download like a current list of all the stocks that are being traded. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually coming in here and I'm just loading this up into that stock table. All right. So let me come back into here. And before I do this, let me show you how I'm running this. So rather than actually install Postgres or Timescale DB on my laptop, let's see if I have this running. I actually just installed it using Docker. And so in the README for this, I have instructions on how you can actually just set this up using Docker. So if you have Docker already installed on your laptop or your desktop, all you have to do is run this Docker run command, and this will create a database. Here it's just creating a Postgres database. For this example, you can use Timescale or Postgres. And then what I just did here is I just did a check to make sure that it's running. I'm using an application here called Table Plus. So I can come in here, I can run queries against this. So this is checking, if I want to look for a specific stock as an example. Yeah. This is letting me look for a specific stock. So I can come over here if I want to look for, if anybody's been mentioning Apple's that stock, I can come in here, I can run that query, and this pulls back everything that has been mentioned on Twitter that has to do with the Apple stock. So run this example here. What I did was I came over here and I'm using the Twitter SDK and Postgres to essentially go through and look for anything that matches this stock ticker symbol. So this stock ticker symbol is Palantir, and this is a stock that I purchased a bunch of shares lately, and it then took a $10 dive after I bought it. What's interesting about this is that Palantir, there's been a lot of talk about it on WallStreetBets, but there's also, there's a lot of talk about it on Twitter. So I want to kind of monitor and see what people were saying about it on Twitter. So what I'm going to do is come back over here to my terminal, and I'm going to say node and there we can see that some people are talking about Palantir. Now, what's interesting about this is if you look at this mention right here, this mentions Kathy Wood. Kathy Wood actually runs a investment group called ARK, and they're considered to be like the disruptor. Like they make investments in a lot of the different disruptive, companies out there. And I think I heard somewhere they had like 100% gain, like from last year. So they've done pretty well. And so this is saying that they're actually going out and buying Palantir stock right now. So this is a fund that actually has a pretty good return on their investment. So the fact that they're buying the Palantir stock means that they believe in the stock. So that is Twitter with Palantir. But what we want to do is we want to take a look at what's up on WallStreetBets. And so what I've done here in this main index file here is I've created a hash map of basically all the different stocks that are available on NASDAQ and NYSE. And then what I'm doing is I'm getting the last time of the last mention. And so what I figured I could do with this is I just want to go through and kind of grab all the comments and stuff that people have been making about anything that refers to a specific stock on WallStreetBets. And so what this will do is this will look for anything that has a $ and then a matching stock symbol. And in actuality, if you actually go and look at WallStreetBets, it's like they don't always use the $, but I'm using the $, for my example here. And then what I'm doing is I'm using Axios to make a call out to the push shift IO. And you can see I have two different calls here. One where I go back 3 days. That's if there's no data in it. I just want to go back 3 days worth of data. Otherwise, it just gets the last time and sets that to the epoch here. And then what I'll do is once it gets that the data, it'll process the data. It just essentially loops through, looks at the title. And then what we do is we take a look to see if there's a matching stock, and if there is, we grab the stock ID and put it into an array. And then what I'm doing is if I find a match, right, if this becomes true, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to insert a mention into my mention table. And this is all I'm doing here is I'm just using a simple SQL insert to basically just take this and insert it into my table. So let's go ahead and try running this. And we got an error, demo fail. But rather than try to debug that, let's actually take a look at the data. So I have in here a query that I created called get the most posted stocks. So if I come in here and I run this, right now this is set to look at anything that matches a misspelling of Twitter. I'm gonna go ahead and comment that out. And let's just run that. And so you can see in here, these two right here, let's go ahead and put the source in here as well. We want the source. So I'm gonna say s.source, and we'll come over here and we'll say s.source. And what did I screw up here? I'm grouping by source name. Oh, I got source. Column does not exist. Let's take a look at it. I did have a column in here called source. I do have a column called source, but it's in the mention table. Not bad. All right. So we'll change that to mention. And let's try to run that again, see what happens. Okay. So if we look here, you can see that the first two are for Twitter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this to WallStreetBets. I just want to see what people are talking about on WallStreetBets. And so we take a look at this, we can see that the most common thing that we're seeing right now is GameStop. So GameStop is getting the most attention right now. And that's kind of obvious because that's been what everybody's been talking about the last couple of weeks. But if you go here and you look at the count of posts and stuff like that, there's a bunch of stuff on here about Palantir. There's a bunch of stuff on AMC, CCIV, Sundial. A lot of these are growth stocks. These are basically stocks for people that make agricultural stuff for helping you grow certain types of weeds. I won't say which one. And there's some other funds. Tesla's in here as well. Riot's been getting a lot of attention lately. I think they fell today, but they've been going up steadily for a while. So that's kind of interesting, but you can also just come in here and take a look at the raw mentions and stuff like that. So if I come over here and let's just create a new query. We'll call this raw mentions. And let's just do this. We'll say select. Let's see here. Select. Name, is it name? One second, I can't remember the name of the table. I'm just going to do star. From mention. All right. And we can run that. And then we can see here that here's basically all these different matching stock mentions here. So there's a lot of cannabis stocks and stuff like that. And then if we want to, we can join that up to, the actual stock. Oops. We'll say join stock S on s.id is equal to s.stock underscore ID. And we'll say M. And then I want to add the symbol here. So we'll say s dot symbol and run that. Let's see here, stock ID. This stock ID does not exist. Oh, it's M stock ID. Hold on a second. There we go. So you can see right here, now we can actually match up the specific stock or stock company. If I want to, I can change this to name. And that gives us the actual name of the company here. And we go through here and take a look at that. So I have this set up so that I can basically run it. It'll just go through that push shift IO and just start off from wherever it last ended. And so I can just go through every day and just kind of build up like a database of all these different stock mentions for using push shift IO. Go back to my slides. Actually, let me take a look. A couple other things here I was going to show. So if you're interested in just like being able to go out and get stock prices, this sort of thing, there's actually Yahoo has a library you can use for getting stock quotes and stuff like that. So I've got a couple here. I've got one here where I can go get the quote for Palantir. All I have to do is get current price. And then I also have this one where I can go back and get the historical prices. And the thing that's nice about that is, let's say I want to do like a technical analysis of the stock. Well, there's that library I was talking about before called TALib. And there's actually, it's actually a C++ library, but there's a Node wrapper for it. And so what I'm doing here is I'm actually importing in that TALib. And then down here, what I'm doing is I am taking all the historical data for that stock, in this case, GameStop. And what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a data structure that has a set of arrays. It's almost kind of like a tensor, where we've got these 5 different arrays that we're going to pass into the library, and then it's going to do some technical analysis based off of something that's called an average directional movement index. So let's go ahead and run that and see what that looks like. So I believe this is get stock price. All right, so the first part was went out and got the stock price for Palantir, and it's down again today, 25.17. But then we also did a technical analysis of GameStop. I almost say GameStock, my apologies. And we can see that the outreal the trend here is going down. So this may not be actually a good stock to purchase. And I think that's about it for, one last thing I was going to show. So something else that we can also do is kind of go through and do a sentiment analysis of what people are talking about with these stocks. And so there's a library that you can use on NPM that's called Sentiment. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going through here and I'm telling it to analyze the messages that are being output from my database. And then it's going to rank it. It's going to give it a positive, negative ranking based off of the sentiment. So it's like if people are saying something really positive, that might be something we might be interested in investing in. If some people are saying something negative, it might be something that we might be interested in selling. And one of the things I've also done is I've taken the rocket and the diamond hands emojis, and I've added that in there for sentiment. So if we see that, we're going to get a lot of additional sentiment based off of that. And let's go ahead and run that. So we'll say node. And so we can go through here and we can see that we're seeing some positive stuff here about Palantir. A lot of neutrals and stuff like that. So there's a lot of zeros in here, but Apple's getting it's getting a lot of love. So to get that data, I used the streaming API that Twitter provides. And what I did is I'm just telling it to look for one specific symbol. So if you wanted to listen to multiple stocks, you'd have to actually set up multiple different streams at the same time in order to kind of collect that. And right now there's over 7,000 listed stocks on the exchange. So that would be, I guess, potentially 7,000 different bots that you'd have to run to basically collect that data. But I thought it was kind of interesting to kind of take a look and see what people are saying. And when you look at this data, it's pretty obvious from looking at it that a lot of this is actually bot generated. So there are people that have already created Twitter bots that are going out that are obviously trying to pump up a stock. So that's one of the things that is pretty interesting to kind of look at, is to see how other people and stuff are trying to play on people's emotions by using social media to kind of pump up some of these stocks. So let me go back to slides. So some of the future topics I think we're going to be talking about. There's a hedge fund that's actually called Numer AI, and it is a open source hedge fund. So one of the things that's kind of interesting is people have created machine learning type models for making investments. And you can go to this hedge fund and say, hey, I want to try running my model. And I thought that was kind of a pretty interesting business model. It's a completely open source hedge fund. Other topics are going to be blockchain, smart contracts, Ethereum, and the Slate language. And so next month, let me see here. Next month, we're actually going to be talking about blockchain, how to program for the blockchain, how to use the Ethereum network, We're going to get into the Solidity programming language, because that's the language you have to use if you want to be able to write smart contracts. And probably the biggest use case is going to be distributed finance or DeFi. But there's all kinds of other things that people are using this technology for. They're using it for supply chain. They're using it for all kinds of stuff. There's actually that's one of the trending skills that they're looking for right now, is for people that have familiarity with, that know how to develop for blockchain. So we're going to be talking about that next month. So I have a couple links here. Like I said before, there's a YouTube channel that I got the inspiration for this from. That's called Part-Time Larry. It's really good. He does a really good job of going through talking about all the different tools and stuff that are available, and different strategies and stuff that you can use. Obviously, PushShift.io, that is essentially, it's an API that you can use for accessing Reddit data. And also, I have this whole thing up on GitHub, but I'm going to post it on the JaxNode GitHub site, so we have it there as well. And with that, do you have any questions? I kind of covered a lot. No questions?
So David, I have one. So you were saying you were doing some technical analysis with this. How do you compare what you're doing here, technical analysis wise, versus what you might do in your brokerage account, say like TD Ameritrade or one of those? Do you find that you're able to kind of get the same amount of information? Is it quicker for you to do it this way versus kind of a manual approach using one of the existing brokerage firms?
So, I mean, basically, this is the way I've been investing up until now. I haven't really used a lot of these tools before, so I'm just starting to get into it. There's all kinds of there's a lot of charting software that you can use as well. I've really kind of just scratched the surface on some of the stuff. If you really want to learn more about some of the software tools, I suggest checking out that YouTube channel, Part-Time Larry. But that was kind of a long answer to a short question. I apologize for going long on that.
Thanks. Thanks for the demo. It's pretty cool stuff. Take a look.
No problem. Anybody else? Any more questions? All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to have these meetings in person soon. I'm hoping that in the next couple of months or whatever, more and more people are going to be vaccinated, and the infection rates and stuff are going to go down, and we'll be able to meet in person once again. So once again, thanks everybody for coming out. I appreciate it. See you next time.
Okay, thanks. See you.